Welcome to the Business Leaders Legacy Podcast, the show where we go behind the scenes of business leaders to uncover their vision, strategies, and challenges they face along the way. My name is Chris Bruner. I'm the CEO of Stillwell Solutions and the host of today's podcast. I am thrilled to have Simon Stillwell, co-founder of Libra Partners. Simon is known for driving sales performance and revenue growth for B2B SMBs by fixing broken sales strategies and team execution using his proven 4P framework, people, product, process, price, to help businesses scale faster, grow revenue consistently. And so, Simon, thank you for being here. I'm excited to get into it. Can you please share with our listeners a little bit about you, your business, and a little bit about the clients you serve?
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. What about me? Well, as you can tell, although I'm based in Boston, I'm from slightly east of Boston originally. I'm English. I've lived in this country now, this time around, for nearly 20 years. And I call Boston my home. I have been in sales, building, managing, and selling myself for, gosh, I don't even want to say, but it's a long time. It's 30 years, right? And I've been fortunate enough to sit on the boards of 8 different companies over the years, most of them private companies, none of them on the PLC boards, but always on the executive board. So I have had tremendous exposure to business, but always focused on sales, marketing, and customer retention, right? That's been my bailiwick. Mostly, I would say, on sales. I would not call myself a marketing expert. So that's really been my history. And Libra Partners is a business founded by my wife and I. And it's taken a few iterations over the years. The current iteration, which has been going for a few years, is actually focusing on helping, as you rightly said, small businesses, small and mid-sized businesses that are in the B2B space. Often those businesses are software companies or in the fintech space, but some of my clients have been and are not in that space at all. That's the world I grew up in. And the reason I think I have clients outside of that space is, to a large degree, the challenges and problems that my clients are facing kind of the same, whether they're in the software or fintech space or not. So that's my history. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. No, thank you for sharing so much. It's really interesting to hear how it all ties together and the experience you had. That's awesome. That is so cool. I really see how it just adds so much value to what you bring to businesses. And so to dive into it a little bit more, you help B2B businesses that are stuck with, revenue plateaus or sales teams that are like underperforming. What makes you so passionate about driving deep fixing like the core drivers of the sales underperformance?
Listen, I've been fortunate enough to be in sales my whole career, really, and it has changed quite significantly over that time, or at least the environment has changed. But I've been very fortunate. It's been good to me. It's probably the only thing that I could have done with my career. I'm a people person. I love people, and so that probably is why I, ended up in the field to start with. Why am I passionate about it? I've watched businesses struggle, right? I've been involved in some businesses that have succeeded. I've been involved in businesses that have failed, okay? Either as an investor or as, an employee. So it's that experience really that has led me to realize that actually I have a skill set born of many years of hard knocks, getting things wrong, learning from those mistakes, moving forward. That means that I can help other businesses. And it really came about, 10 years ago, when my wife and I set up another business. And as we were working on that business to grow it from zero, we had no income. And so I was approached by a company that I knew, but had never worked for, And they'd been going for about 20 years. And I thought they were a very successful business. And the founder contacted me and said, "Hey, can you help me out? I've got me and three other salespeople. We're not really growing as fast as we want to grow. Would you consider doing some consulting with us to help?" And I'd never considered doing this before. And I'd always hated the idea of being a consultant. I hated the word consultant. But I said, sure, I'll help. So I went into that business, which was at the time, I think about $4 million a year in revenue. It was in a space that I didn't really know. They were actual consultants themselves. And I worked with them for a year, 5 days a month, for a year. And the result at the end of that year was their revenue was up 63%. And they then had a foundation. His business is now, 5 times the size. And he credits some of that growth to the foundation that we put in place. So when I went into that company, really, I looked at it from the outside and I thought, well, okay, this guy's hugely successful entrepreneur. He's got a great business. It's been going 20 years. I didn't know the metrics behind it. I get in there and I find the sales organization is just not functioning very well. Okay, they had no CRM system. They had no accountability, really. Their compensation schemes were all wonky. They didn't have proper goals. It was the founder that was driving most of the sales. They had no sales process. So there were lots of things that were very obvious to me, but not so obvious to a very successful entrepreneur, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit surprised because I really thought, well, what am I going to be able to do to help this guy? And then it all seemed so obvious to me and so simple to me. And yet to them, this was a revolution, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm making it sound perhaps more dramatic than it was, but their revenue went up 63% in a year, right? And
Yeah,
that
that's
foundation
great.
was in place. And so that it was after that that I realized, okay, that's interesting. I could go into a company that's successful, on the surface at least. Well, it was successful. And I could fix some very core problems around the stuff that I know about. And that makes a huge difference. And so I didn't do anything with it then because we were focused, my wife and I were focused on building this other business. But once we'd done that, that's when I came back to it with Libra Partners. And I really sat down and thought about it and thought, okay, well, there are bound to be other companies in that situation. And there are plenty of them. And they don't all have the same challenges,
Mhm.
but some of them have common challenges. So that's really how I got into it. That's why I'm passionate about it. And I really enjoy being able to make a difference.
Yeah.
The first company I was a director of, we sold to a very big company with $3 billion in revenue at the time. And we were a company that had, 50 million at the time. And I went into this enormous organization. And although my responsibility was significant, I was running a $70 million a year sort of book of business, new and existing. I could make no decisions. I couldn't do anything. And even my boss that ran the business really could do very little. And I hated that environment because I couldn't really make any changes at all. So I much prefer being able to go into a smaller business, assess what's going on, and help them. That's what gets me excited because I can make, in my own small way, a difference to a business's, revenue and
Yeah,
future.
no, that's really cool. That's really awesome. Tons to unpack there. There's a lot of it's really cool to hear how it just pieces together and how it came, like Libra Partners came about naturally out of just wanting to help. Like
Right.
that's so cool and utilizing the skill set that you have. And so that's super cool. I know like Libra Partners uses that proven framework that you've mentioned, right? The 4 Ps, right? The people, product, process, and price, right? Could you maybe explain how these 4 pillars align to help businesses scale faster and grow revenue consistently?
Yeah, I think they are components or pillars that I have come up over the years, right? And those are essentially there's lots of stuff that falls under every single one of them, right? But pretty much every issue you can fit under one. So if you don't get all those four pillars working properly together, you don't have a well-functioning sales organization, or it could be better, right? So if you've got the wrong people, well, that's kind of obvious, right? But if you've got people in the wrong positions, right? So you've got the right people, but they're not in the right positions, or you're missing people, or those people are not properly compensated, or aligned. Their compensation isn't properly aligned with the company's goals, for instance. Those are all people problems that cause a lack of growth, right? Or they will restrict the growth. The product, it's kind of obvious, right? Sounds kind of obvious, but it's sometimes not as obvious as you think it is, right? So I've been involved in, for instance, sorry, I have an itch. I've been involved in a business, for instance, where we came over from Europe and we had absolutely the best product in Europe. We came to the States with that product, and we realized quite quickly, okay, we're not making the sales we ought to be making. And the reason was our product, although very, very strong, was not as strong as it needed to be in certain aspects that were important in the States. So we didn't have what's called product market fit for this market. Okay. So if anything is wrong with your product, and it's not meeting its customers' needs, or it's way too complex and people need something much, much, simpler, that's a problem. Process is something that people miss a lot. A sales process. So if I take you back to that original company I was talking about, there was no sales process. The founder operated in the way that he always operated. And this is really, really common, by the way, with founder-led businesses, founder-led sales teams. So the founder in that case had tremendous gravitas because he'd been in the business a long time. He had a huge network. People knew him. If he said, I'm going to do something, everybody could trust it would get done because he's the founder, right? A salesperson working under him does not have that same level of gravitas when they're talking to a prospective client, right? There is an immediate difference. That's one example of why a sales process is really important. So you need to build out a sales process in order to be able to transfer what is succeeding with the founder through to a sales team. That goes wrong in a lot of cases because the founder gets bored of selling. They got everything else to do, right? They got to run their whole business. And yet they are the face of the company. They're the ones selling. And so their immediate solution is, hey, what I need to get head of a VP of sales, or I need to hire my first salesperson. And they bring those people in, one or the other, and they tell them, off you go, you're the professional, go sell. And then it doesn't work, or it works only to a fraction of how it should be working. And then they're saying 6 months later, well, I'm not even a salesperson, and I was able to do this, and I've hired a professional person, and they're rubbish. How is that possible? Well, they gave them nothing, right? There was no process involved. And so this is really, really common. And that's why sales process and other processes are really, really important in sales. And the final one, the pillar, price. Yeah, it's kind of obvious. Sometimes the pricing can be too high. Sometimes actually it can be too low, believe it or not. I've advised businesses to raise their prices quite significantly. And that has helped dramatically, not just the bottom line and the profitability, but it's actually helped them with their positioning because their product was too cheap. And vis-a-vis their competition, it was considered, okay, well, that can't be any good. It's cheap, right? And, we all have this kind of bias in our head that, yeah, that's a cheap thing. I don't really want that one. I want the one that's more expensive. So pricing can also be a problem. And there are lots of examples under all of those. So if you get those four things humming along, you've got the right people in the right places, you've got the right product with product market fit, you've got processes in place so you can scale your sales engine, your revenue generating team, and you're pricing your products appropriately for the market. Now you have something that can actually keep moving. There are lots of things that you need to do as well as that, but without those four things, or with any one of those four pillars being off kilter, you're restricting your growth. And so that's really why I focus on that.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. It's like it makes sense. It's foundational. It really is. It makes up like how you will grow the business, right? Because it needs those things. And so that's totally makes sense. Super interesting. I would like to ask a little bit about like trends within the industry. Are you seeing any new trends or technologies that you're seeing within like the B2B sales industry or any changes that you're seeing with sales teams, anything like that?
The obvious one is AI, right? I mean, hello. That is disruptive. It's extremely prevalent in the sales space. It's radically changing the way that companies operate. It's radically changing all these relationships, right? So it's changing the way they think about suppliers. SaaS businesses, a lot of them are struggling because the idea, companies now have is, hey, why am I going to pay to have a analytics solution, for instance, that I have to pay a subscription fee for when I can kind of develop one myself really, really quickly now using tools that use AI. That's one minor example. So AI is disrupting the industry everywhere. I think it's phenomenally powerful. I think in a lot of instances, I see it used badly. Along with probably everybody, get a lot of these sort of AI spam messages. One of the challenges that sales organizations have always had is lead generation, right? And there is, unless you're in the business where you need to gather 500 clients every month, the concept of reaching out to thousands of organizations to try and tell them about your product is, in my world at least, right, in the B2B space, is just doesn't work. But what's now happening is AI, because it can automate processes so quickly and can, quote unquote, research so quickly, and it can if it's trained properly. It's being used, and the answer is we just get these what I would call spam cannons, which are just sending out drivel. I get it every single day, and so that's a very poor use of AI. A good use of AI is to do the personalized research on prospective customers really, really well. What used to take a long time, half an hour or more, to kind of figure out for every single prospective client, information about them, their goals, what they talk about, podcasts they've been on, what their challenges are, things that they need to solve, and so on and so forth, can now be done really quickly using AI. It needs to be checked in a lot of cases, but it can be done really quickly. And there are, of course, thousands of tools that are incorporating AI or that are built using AI that purport to help sales organizations. And some of them are really good and some of them are not. And then finally, AI is impacting businesses because somebody at the C-suite that doesn't really understand AI is saying, right, let's use AI everywhere. And so they've just allowed their salespeople and others to simply use ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, willy-nilly, without any control or guidelines, really, or any building of it into a sales process. And that can be a real issue, right? So that, I think, is the single biggest technology disruptor. It'll come as no surprise to anybody listening to this.
Yeah.
But there are others, right? I mean, it's sales. I mean, we are struggling a little bit I think in terms of the economy right now, businesses are not spending. As we record this, of course, there is a war going on, between the US, Israel, and Iran. That's making life difficult, but that's hopefully a very short-term problem that will get resolved. But I think companies are overall more cautious. I am seeing businesses invest less in 26 than they were investing in 2025. And I think part of that is just concern around the economy, and part of it is they don't really know what the future is going to look like. And AI is being so disruptive that they're having to figure out, okay, how do we navigate this new world? What can we as a business reduce in terms of headcount and improve in terms of efficiency? And what are our customers going to do with AI? And how does that affect what we are looking to sell them?
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot there. AI definitely is making a change in a lot of different businesses in a lot of different ways. And yeah, I agree. There is like a handful of ways that there's just like AI jargon out there, and it's just just trying to use it in the basic way for trying to use it in a reach masses, and it is more and more obvious as that's coming out, and seeing it a lot and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, there definitely is a lot of strategic ways that people are using AI in great ways, and creating redundant automations, or doing a handful of different things. And so yeah, it's really interesting. I'm wondering, as we kind of dive into that and dive into just a little bit more about some of the clients you help, or what are some of the things that you are seeing with your clients that are working really well?
I think the clients that are working well are thinking carefully about their revenue goals. Those that are working well are have got good sales organizations that are running. They do have processes, right? So they have sales organizations that are well structured and well sized. I think the old SaaS model, and it seems crazy to me to say old SaaS model because it wasn't that many years ago, where you had multi layers of people within the sales organization. So you had internal SDR salespeople that were making calls and generating leads. And then you had AEs, people who are out there, selling and so on. And then you had account managers and all this kind of stuff. There were numbers of people that were doing in jobs within sales. That stuff has, I think, completely changed. And AI is really dramatically changing that. So I think the companies that are doing well have structured their sales organizations appropriately for their goals. They are also focused on their existing clients and opportunities within their existing client bank. So when people think about revenue and they think about sales, they often think about top line growth in the number of new clients they can add. And that's obviously very important. But it's not going to work if you're adding new clients and losing existing clients out the back end, right? And that can be for a myriad of reasons. So organizations that are doing well are looking at revenue holistically and figuring out, okay, are we maintaining our existing clients? Are we growing our existing clients in terms of the revenue that we derive from them? What are the opportunities around that? And then are we actually now looking correctly to grow our new clients and new logos? And if so, how and where are we doing that? And then they're managing and holding that their sales organization to the right size to do that. I do come across businesses where they have sort of projected as like a hockey stick approach in terms of their new revenue projections. Those guys are often struggling, right? And so sizing your expectations appropriately is really, really important. That's a business function, obviously, rather than just a sales function.
Yeah.
Um, but those that are doing well right now are profitable, and they're focusing on growing, but growing sustainably and profitably, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to just adding new clients.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. Yeah, it definitely is there's definitely a lot of pieces that come into the whole sales funnel and the sales cycle and yeah, I think like you had said, like just keeping just making sure it's working throughout the entire process is so important. And so yeah, no, it really is interesting. I feel like you can add so much value to businesses, and I think it's super cool to hear just how you talked about how some of those challenges that businesses are facing and in with the sales, and it's yeah, super interesting. I think it's really cool to just see how that all how you help businesses and how that all comes together, because it has to, like those pillars, like it has to all come together, right, for it to be a healthy, and for the company to actually have growth. And so yeah, no, super cool, super cool. Well, Simon, I really have enjoyed the a lot of the conversation. I think you've added a lot of value. And I think a lot of businesses are would be interested to learn more, to keep up with what you have going on. And so where can some of the listeners, where can we stay involved with what you have going on, find you, and yeah, just stay involved.
I mean, the place that thank you, I should say. I hope it is useful. I mean, if it's useful, I guess, for one company, that would be terrific. Um, if you want to stay in touch with me, the best place is LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I do have another podcast that I run with another English guy, which we do sporadically, called the Salty Sales Sages. Um, and that's on YouTube. And my website is librapartnerssolutions.com. Libra Partners was already taken when we set that up, so it's rather a bit of a mouthful. But anyway, so those are the places you can find me. I'm always happy for people to reach out. I do believe in giving back, and I'm always happy to talk to people and just see if I can help on a quick phone call without charging anything, right? So I do believe in doing that. So yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. To close, I would like to ask one last question, right? Since this is the Business Leaders Legacy podcast and you being the co-founder of Libra Partners, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
I've never really thought of myself leaving behind any legacy. Um, it's interesting. It feels a little bit grandiose to me, like who would care about my legacy, right? But I think what I would say, business-wise, I would like to have helped as many small and mid-sized businesses genuinely uh, sort their revenue out and give them the foundation for ongoing growth long after I've departed the scene, right? Um, that would be very satisfying. But I think personally, I would like to leave a mark as a good human, right? I would like for people to think of me as a good friend and someone who was uh, a contributor, human contributor to the planet and the people around him, rather than someone who just took. That would be very satisfying for me to know that. I mean, my brother-in-law has a very good expression, which is, in order to be a good friend, first of all, you have to be one. Oh, sorry. I mean, in order to have good friends, I beg your pardon, first of all, you have to be one. And I think that's true. So those would be my legacies, if you could call them legacies.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, it definitely seems like you're doing that, and it's super cool. Super cool to see the impact you're having on businesses, the impact you're having just in general. And so yeah, thank you so much again for just sharing your business, sharing just what you're going through and how you really kind of structured a lot of how you help businesses. Super cool. Well, thank you again, Simon. For all of our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, share, like the channel. We appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it.